Arturo Demodica's great bronze charging bull, which has now stood in Lower Manhattan at Bowling Green since its arrival, December 20th, 1989, is arguably the most famous and most visited work of sculpture on Earth today. Charging Bull draws visitors every day of the year, all day long. Millions every year from every corner of the globe. There are very few visitors to New York City who do not come to see Charging Bull, to touch Charging Bull, to be photographed with Charging Bull. It is difficult to find anyone anywhere who does not know of Charging Bull. Charging Bull has become a symbol of many things: the markets, New York City, America, strength, and power. For children, most of all, Charging Bull is simply a magical creature they are endlessly drawn to and fascinated by. If we survive, it is likely Charging Bull will still be standing right here 100 years from now, 500 years from now, even 1,000 or more years to come. We can only imagine where this great and fascinating work by Arturo Demodica will rate far in the future. Still, it is inspiring to imagine as its legend grows, as more and more of us visit Charging Bull with each passing day.
So let's get going. The first item is the proposed move of Charging Bull. I think many of us, if not all of us, are rather familiar with Charging Bull. It's been around for close to over 30 years here in Lower Manhattan, and it's a very popular destination for a lot of tourists, a lot of visitors. We see constantly people taking all kinds of photos. It has an unusual history that I could briefly go through. The artist who did originally placed it just on his own on Wall Street back in 1989 at the foot of the stock exchange. They immediately removed it, and not too long after, there was an agreement to place it where it's been since then, at Bowling Green Park. Today, we are hearing from the city of New York, which has a proposal to move it to an alternate site uh, closer to Wall Street and the stock exchange. But we will hear more about that. Let me, without further ado, introduce the city's first representative, and that is Ed Pincar. He is the Manhattan Borough Commissioner for the New York City Department of Transportation. So he will tell us all about the proposal, and obviously, let's try to let him go through his proposal, and after that, I will allow the committee to start asking questions, etc.
My name is Ed Pincar. I am Manhattan Borough Commissioner for the New York City Department of Transportation to provide details on the city's application to relocate the Charging Bull statue from Bowling Green to within the existing security zone on Broad Street, just north of Exchange Place. We plan to bring this proposal to the Public Design Commission next month. We plan to bring this proposal to the Public Design Commission next month Before I proceed with the presentation, I would like to provide background information on how the city reached the decision to relocate the statue. As we all remember there were two separate terrorist attacks involving motor vehicles in Manhattan in 2017, including along West Street within Community Board 1. The administration at the time established a working group composed of several different agencies to undertake a thorough review of vulnerable areas and develop solutions to protect New Yorkers and those from around the world who visit us. The city attempted to install some security infrastructure to contain the very large number of visitors, but still people spilled into Broadway and onto Whitehall Street as they queued for the statue. Identifying an alternative site proved a very large task that required the expertise from many different agencies, but not only NYPD and DOT, but the fire department, the Department of Environmental Protection, in order to account for emergency service requirements, pedestrian access and flow, and potential underground conflicts with the water, subway, and utility networks. Certainly starts to provide the context of where we would like to relocate the bull. This would be north of Exchange Place, but south of the existing security fence at the New York Stock Exchange. It will also be south and on the opposite side of the street as to where Fearless Girl is currently stationed. Here is a picture of the statue itself, the iconic charging bull, which, as Chair Goldstein mentioned, was created and installed by the artist Arturo Di Modica, weighing just over 7,000 pounds. It is approximately 11 feet by 16 feet and made of bronze. Also, as the chair mentioned, there was controversy when the statue was originally placed and then moved from the Stock Exchange to Bowling Green, where it sits today. Since these photos were taken, DOT worked closely with CB1's Transportation Committee, and I see Chair Betty Kay is on the line, to redesign the Whitehall corridor by implementing a shared street. And I think that has definitely helped the overall network But certainly we all recognize and can see, just looking at these photos, just how many people are coming to see the iconic bull. And again, that's despite the city's best efforts with trying to place some security infrastructure in. Here, again, is just showing an aerial view of the proposed location on Broad Street. These 4 photos depict more specifically where the bull can go placed. And just to take a moment to talk through this a little bit, obviously we needed to find a suitable location that was away from all of the different underground infrastructure pieces in this area, away from manholes, from vents, from fire hydrants. This is just a fundamentally safer site. And for DOT's own part, we are confident that safety and the overall experience for pedestrians visiting the statue will be far more improved at this location. We do have some options, or I should say 2 options, with it, the statue facing either north towards Wall Street, as depicted in this photo, or potentially south towards Exchange Place. After hearing your feedback tonight and receiving any comments from the full board, DOT intends to present this proposal to the Public Design Commission on June 15th for their review and approval.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, let me just start by asking a question or two. How close is the statue's proposed location? It looks like it's fairly close, excuse me, to the entrance of some buildings. So is that a commercial building that it's close to?
So yes, we do have at 20 Broad Street, we have a entrance to a residential building. It would be placed within the roadway, anywhere from 2.8 to 3.4 feet from the curb, anywhere from 2.8 to 3.4 feet from the curb.
Did you make any effort to inform the buildings and especially the residents?
Really the start of outreach process, and we're happy to have conversations with not only the building but the commercial tenants. Obviously, in normal times I would have already walked down there and tried to talk to people, but I wasn't unable to do that at the moment.
All right, let's open it up for members to ask questions first.
Yeah, I do have a few questions. But I just have a couple of questions on the process. It was very unclear to me. And this has been brought up before, that the city the city, of course, owns the property, but the relocating of the art seems to not be in the purview of the city. I mean, the city can simply say we want to remove the art, but is the artist, the relationship of the artist and the city's property, is that something that we need to have a better understanding of just in terms of process at the city level?
City law establishes a procedure by which a city agency can apply to the Public Design Commission in order to locate or relocate pieces of art that are on the property of that the agency controls. Obviously, we've worked very closely with the administration to make sure that this was within our rights to do, and we believe it is.
Anthony, did you have your hand up?
The bull may be in front of 20 or Broad Street, which has some residential. Knowing that this is very popular and tourists will flock to it, have you considered any provisions for protecting the entrance to the residential building?
So we definitely want to think through what type of measures we can put in place to really assist with the queuing that happens. Obviously, our primary focus at the moment is to make sure that the queuing is more safe, occurs more safely than it does today on the very narrow.
Okay, next speaker, Elizabeth Lemaire.
I also don't think aesthetically that the bowl fits in that space. I mean, the beauty of where it is now in that triangle aesthetically really works quite nicely. And I'm wondering to what extent the artist has been put into the equation in terms of getting input from the artist as to the movement. It seems like that would be something that would be appropriate. And I'd like to hear as to what type of outreach was done with respect to the artist as well.
Elizabeth, thank you for your comments. Yes, it's a very heavily trafficked area as it stands today, not only by tourists, but by residents and those going to and from transit to their office buildings.
Right.
I know myself, I walk down this corridor, but it's far superior in our mind to where it exists today. I should also mention that aesthetics of the proposal will be judged by the Public Design Commission. I thank you for your questions. I think you're 100% right. I think we are going to get some ideas and questions from the Design Commission, and that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight with you, because before we go to PDC, we first seek the input from the local community.
Right. Well, I would like to add, with respect to Fearless Girl, that certainly has not become the global icon that the Charging Bull is. I mean, that's a destination. Tourists from all around the world, they're coming to Manhattan. They know it's at the foot of Broadway, looking up toward what the city became. It's really become quite an iconic location but I do have some concerns, and I think outreach really needs to happen before you make this decision.
Paul?
Let me just add that I know you asked about the artist and has he been consulted. My understanding is that I don't know how much he's been consulted, but he apparently is on record strongly opposing this move. Let me just add that I know you asked about the artist and has he been consulted. My understanding is that I don't know how much he's been consulted, but he apparently is on record strongly opposing this move. You'll be hearing from his representative a little later on when we finish this question round. And call on speakers, Laura Starr.
Thank you. And so I agree with everything Elizabeth just said. And also, I'm not surprised that the artist had that reaction. Ed, just for the record, I'm a landscape architect. I've been doing public landscape architectural work for 30 or 40 years. I was the head landscape architect in Central Park. And I think that the bull belongs where it is, with that leafy background of the park behind it. I think the fact that you guys don't know which way to face the bull means this is just like, there's no context for it here. It's like in the middle of no man's land. It's really ugly. And I think that the bull belongs where it is, with that leafy background of the park behind it. I think the fact that you guys don't know which way to face the bull means this is just like, there's no context for it here. It's like in the middle of no man's land. It's really ugly. And no, it is, and downtown Lower Manhattan gets millions of visitors a year. It's a world capital, and we should be trying to make it beautiful. And where it is now, with some, good design and traffic calming and the other type of urban furniture that can happen there, you can solve the crowd problem. And this is just like, there's no context for it here. It's like in the middle of no man's land. It's really ugly. And no, it is, and downtown Lower Manhattan gets millions of visitors a year. It's a world capital, and we should be trying to make it beautiful. And where it is now, with some, good design and traffic calming and the other type of urban furniture that can happen there, you can solve the crowd problem. And, it's time that this, especially with this COVID, it's time to rethink how our streets are used and how they look. And so I'm just seconding Elizabeth and saying I don't think this is at all a good location. Also, I work on Broad Street and it is very crowded here already. It's a complete no man's land. It's total chaos right here.
The next speaker, Mark Amoruso.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, Elizabeth hit a lot of the points there. Just maybe reiterate briefly. Yeah, I'm a little bit miffed and disturbed that the residents of this location, this relocation location, weren't consulted to at least be able to chime in today to give us more guidance on their feelings about it. And I agree with what most of the last two speakers said. It is in an iconic location. Here, it'll go from the charging bull to the lost bull. I mean, he just looks like he's doesn't know what to do. If I go left, right, north, south, no. So it's just it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit there.
Joe, I see you fidgeting. Does that mean you want to try to talk? Go, Joe.
So first of all, the guy representing the Department of Transportation never mentioned the artist. And thank you for telling us that he does not like to move the artwork where it is now, and it became an overnight sensation. So number two, it seems to me before you come to the community board, we as a community board should know what the residents think of the what you're doing. And to put them last is not the way the community works. We want to hear what the residents have to say so we can take it within ourselves what they think. You talk about queuing. There's no problem at the Bull about lining up, taking the picture, or where the people stand. It's one of the best places to be because people respect one another unbelievably. You talk about queuing. There's no problem at the Bull about lining up, taking the picture, or where the people stand. It's one of the best places to be because people respect one another unbelievably. I think you people have gone the wrong way about it. Elizabeth hit the nail on the head.
And I do, while hearing some of the criticisms of the proposal and understanding that, from an aesthetic standpoint, some may feel the bull works better in Bowling Green. The bull works better in Bowling Green. The bull works better in Bowling Green. I do disagree, and I think many others will, that it is working from a functional standpoint today. And I do believe that Sergeant Winger from NYPD Counterterrorism may be on the phone. Diana, if I could ask you to unmute Sergeant Winger, he might just be able to provide a little bit more color on the evaluation that NYPD undertook while looking at this issue.
Hi, this is Sergeant Winger from NYPD Counterterrorism.
Okay, you're on. Go ahead.
The NYPD, we spent a lot of time in and around Community Board 1. It's probably the finest spots within the city. And as you all know, you don't need me to be telling you about how popular the bull is at its current location. You don't need me to be telling you about how popular the bull is at its current location. And that it's too popular for its current location. We've come up with trying to create a protective envelope around the bull. We've used Jersey barriers. We've used our concrete block. We've tried to make it look aesthetically pleasing. DOT's replaced our block and Jersey barriers with the granite block. And we're really just trying to find a better spot for it where everyone can be at peace and can enjoy it as much as they can without having to worry
speak. Let's go to Tammy Meltzer next.
I had a question in terms of the bull itself. Was there ever an option when we're looking at the redesign of Whitehall of taking a look at the bottom at where the bull is at the apex of that triangle? The back of the triangle is right along the Bowling Green Park itself. Was there any dialogue or consideration or look at moving the bull literally back where the triangle widens significantly so it becomes seamless with the triangle as a way to not only beautify the cobblestone area, but provide a better and safer location for the bull while retaining its presence?
Tammy, that's a great question. I do know that we scoured available options that again took into account all of the other potential conflicts. I can't say precisely your location was evaluated. I can't say precisely your location was evaluated, but I'm happy to go back and ask our colleagues on the Security Infrastructure Committee, as well as with the Parks Department, to see what the challenges at that site might have been.
Potentially to see a way to reimagine Bowling Green Park to be able to connect the entire area. I mean, my concerns obviously is this will be just a giant cobblestone area that potentially, once the barricades and other things are removed, becomes a place that is now in a parking lot for delivery trucks or placards or other things, instead of being able to incorporate the bill potentially in opening up to green the entire space and extending Bowling Green Park to the apex of where the bull is now. A win-win for everything. A win-win for everything.
I hear you. I think, I can certainly see why you and others might think it a logical site. My recollection, and it's been a little bit of a while now, was that there were some utility conflicts at that location, but we can certainly clarify and follow up with you.
Let's go to Richard Corman.
Yes, hi. Thanks for the presentation. I have a couple of comments and a question. First comments are that I definitely support a lot of what we've heard about being a lot more creative and exploring ways to keep it in the current location and improve the traffic patterns around that. I think we could do a lot more than what we've seen so far in this presentation. And there is some concern for sure about the ability of the artist and the role of the artist in making a decision around whether this moves or not. I know people that know the artist and know that the artist objects. And my question is that I'm not really clear what the reason for moving it is. I know you said terrorism, I know you said security, an accident waiting to happen, but have accidents happened there? And what exactly is the terrorism concern? People gather all over the parks and downtown, and certainly where you're going to be wanting to place the bull. I don't understand the terrorism issue or security issue at all.
The security concern is anytime you have a large number of people congregating in one area, and you're unable to provide appropriate protection, then you do run the risk. But a deliberate attempt, it's an iconic location For sure, it's an iconic statue and view, which might actually even add to the desire to have an attack there. And that's certainly, some of the things that NYPD counterterrorism has expressed when, undertaking its evaluation of, to what extent the city is able to protect New Yorkers and visitors at that spot. I do. That was definitely something that we looked at, and there was some additional complications involved. That'd be great.
I would just make one comment about that in terms of terrorism. I think we need to be careful about when we use the term terrorism. I would just make one comment about that in terms of terrorism. I think we need to be careful about when we use the term terrorism and not use it so freely. People gather, this is New York City, people gather in crowds all over the city. Every place, every street corner could be a target for terrorism. I think terrorism gets thrown in here really, truly unnecessarily and inappropriately from what you've described so far.
All right, Sergeant, do you want to respond, or are you okay?
No, I think it's a fair question, and but I think the response is pretty straightforward. What we look to do is there are numerous locations in the city that have a high density of pedestrian activity, and we look to protect the areas that kind of meet three criteria. We look for areas that have a very high dense pedestrian capacity, that are associated with an iconic structure or national monument, and then those that have had past terrorist threats or attacks on in the past. The symbolism of the charging bull is basically a symbol of the American economy, which is one of the reasons and one of the motivating reasons for the attacks on 9/11 and other attacks since then in the United States and abroad on American infrastructure. So the fact that the charging bull, it's not just a statue; it's a pretty significant statue for people that don't like it. Our main interest with this location, right? It's an iconic location, it's an iconic spot, it's a symbolic statue. And if the argument is that it hasn't really been that unsafe yet, we've identified this as being unsafe. It's a poor spot for having this many people to congregate. If an accident does happen on that spot, we can see this. This is just a poor location. So.
I believe we have just one more community board member who wanted to say something, and that is Rosa Chang. And as I said, welcome, Rosa, a new member of this committee and of the community board.
But I also think that the proposed location at Wall Street just further would concentrate a huge tourist presence in an area that already is completely inundated, as Elizabeth said earlier. And I like the idea of the fact that downtown, there's almost like a tourist loop there's a path of landmarks and places where they go visit, and I think that that's very helpful to the life of the street that happens down here, and that the bull being in its current location actually sort of spreads that around and is helpful towards the businesses and the retail and the life on the street. So the question is addressing the safety concerns for the pedestrians while also perhaps not densifying the tourist presence directly in front of the Stock Exchange. I really loved Tammy's suggestion of moving it south, because I do feel like that park is underutilized, and that park and the bull could have a great, strong connection, and also provide a lot more space, safe space, for the tourists to sort of congregate around the bull and take their photos and whatnot. And last thought was also that the Whitehall Street, or the street just to the east, where Broadway sort of forks off, every single time I've been there, I've never really seen much vehicular traffic there. And it seems like such an opportunity to take something that's completely underutilized for what it is and do something amazing with it and create a better public experience and space that would make this, sort of tie in with the park, tie in with the bull, moved further south to a wider expanse, and create a real moment in the city that celebrates it, that celebrates the park, and doesn't just concentrate all of this tourist energy and attention into a spot that already has more than it needs, frankly. So I'm really happy that we're having this discussion. I think it's a
Okay, I see we do have several other committee members. Susan Cole is next up. Okay.
Go ahead, Susan. Thank you very much. I think Rosa and Tammy's suggestion about moving it south is fabulous. I agree with Laura and Megan. I don't want to go on and on. I walk those streets, both of them, daily. It is a poor choice to put it on Nassau, where you want to put it, and there's going to be a whole new subway station, subway platform there with an elevator. It's going to be just too congested. This space, Whitehall, really, they spill into Whitehall. They don't spill into Broadway because the street splits. The buses go down on Broadway. They do not go down on Whitehall. And I think you just haven't done your job well enough. And that's all I have to say.
Let's keep going then. We have next up Francis Curtis.
Everybody said everything I was feeling.
And then in that case, let's go to Mariama James.
Thank you, Paul. My question is about the money. Now, while safety is always a priority, my question is, how much of a priority is this move in consideration of the growing budget deficits in the city? I'm presuming the city is paying for this, since this is a New York City DOT presentation, so taxpayer money. We keep hearing about all the cuts to the budget, the city budget, and they're going to continue to grow as long as COVID pandemic continues. So how, in that respect, how much of a priority is this? In the 18 years since 9/11, has there ever been an accident in this area? I mean, this preemptive move, in consideration of a potential accident that might not ever happen.
Mariama, thank you for your comments. This is not a financial issue to the city. It's a city issue. However, the relocation costs would be borne by private partners and not with city tax dollars should the relocation move forward.
Okay, so with that, are there any other members of the committee who have not been heard? Sorry.
I just had one question, Commissioner. I just wanted to know, how many other alternative places did you consider for this relocation?
There was a laundry list. I do know that we focused at other spots within and around Bowling Green because it is, again, a logical and natural desire to just try to get the bull further south. I'm pulling up just Street View on my second laptop screen, and even from that view, you'll see a number of utility conflicts, manhole covers that were, the reason it was unable simply to be moved south.
I was just asking the question, would you be able to share with the community or the committee what these places were? Because I think a little more definition as to how you came up with this would be helpful. And given that I assume there's no urgency here in terms of the timing of relocating this, particularly in light of the fact that we probably won't see tourists in this location or any other for a while, could we sort of maybe reconsider? I think some tremendous points were raised. I couldn't agree more with Rosa Chang on the very wedged in quality of the location you have with a 2 to 3 foot space between the sidewalk and all in front of a residential building that makes the, of course, iconic bull look like it belongs there. All these questions are really worthy of a little more reflection and potential revision. Is there some room for more input and looking at some alternatives, or is this somewhat of a fait accompli?
Again, we're here tonight as the start of the conversation, and definitely my team and I are taking thorough notes, and we're going to report back not only to our colleagues but to our sister agencies on what we're hearing and seeing in what ways we're able to respond. Some of the.
I'm glad to hear that. That's great. Thanks very much.
Yes, thank you.
Paul, I have a quick question. Can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead.
So I feel like you buried the lead with the private donor comment. Would we know who these donors are and what their motivation is? Is that something?
Ed, do you want to say who the private donors are?
We're in contact with the New York Stock Exchange, and the motivation is again, understanding the city's budget is not in great shape even before the crisis. Are we able to make a really good improvement for Lower Manhattan and the overall Stock Exchange district by relocating the bull?
All right. So at this stage of the meeting, I want to give a couple of speakers who've been very outspoken and played a real leadership role in terms of the Bowling Green area. One is Art Piccolo, who's been around Community Board 1 for years, and he is in charge of the Bowling Green Association. I will allow him to introduce himself, and we said we would give him 10 minutes to present some counter arguments, although Art at this point, maybe some of your arguments have already been made. But in any event, after that, we'll also hear from Todd Fine, president, who has some thoughts on this that he'd like to share. And then we will have a few other public speakers.